We could do anything. But what you gonna do for it? How you gonna move for it? What you gonna be?
Hey everybody, welcome to the channel. I am A-Train and I do bets, and I do bets with OddsJam. So one of the things that's important with anyone who wants to be a sharp sports bettor is the notion of closing line value. This is a term you're going to hear over and over again, but I think is not necessarily something that non-sharp sports bettors are really that familiar with and really understand. And so it's not that complicated once you understand what we're talking about. So what happens when you make a bet, right? When you make a bet, you're going to place a bet on some event happening, a team winning or the spread or the total. We'll cover those in other videos, but we'll have an outcome and we'll have a price and the odds that you pay to make that wager and the odds that you'll get when you win that wager versus what you're risking to and what you will lose if you lose that wager. But what happens is when you place a bet at a point in time. And so if we wanted to bring up, and maybe we should just bring up the OddsJam, let's bring up the OddsJam Sportsbook screen. Let's go over here and we're going to look at the OddsJam Sports screen and let's do, we can do some NBA. We'll do some NBA money line. We'll keep it simple, right? NBA money line is just which team is going to win. We're looking at different odds and what have you. And if you're doing anything with OddsJam, one of the key things that we're going to do with OddsJam is find the best line. We're going to find the best odds to place our bets at, right? And so what happens is that at any given time, our best available line or algorithmic line, what will give us an advantage, we're going to be looking for bets that are better than what this, no vig line would be. And that's fine. And that's something that we want to do. In this case, I'm not seeing any jump out that would be really good to play, but that's okay. We're not worried about positive EV betting right now. What we're worried about, though, is understanding how do we track whether we're good at this? How do we understand whether we're good at betting these things or not? Because what happens with sports betting is that you place a bet at a price. Like we could go to Caesars right now and bet on the Celtics at minus 135. It seems to be the best line that we can get compared to the other lines that are available. And so if we wanted to bet on the Boston Celtics tonight, we could go bet at Caesars at minus 135. And we'd say, that might be a good bet. That might not be a good bet. We bet what we wanted to. But how do we know if in the long run, we're betting in a way that is positive EV? Because there's one thing to say, I think I'm betting positive EV when you make a wager. And it's another thing to look back and say, oh, these were positive EV bets. Because what happens is we're not trying to outthink the market. We're not trying to predict the future. We're not trying to say, hey, we think the Celtics should win or the 76ers are more likely to win. What we're saying is, when we use tools, like we'll go over to the positive EV tool at OddsJam, what we're saying here is that there's a price discrepancy in the market where in this case, like a Fliff is providing a price that's so much better than what the calculation, and if I pull myself off here, you can see the calculation says anything that's better than minus 130 is going to be a plus EV bet. And so in this case, minus 120 is great. And then we realize, okay, yeah, that's for Kevin Durant over 30.5. We'll go place that over at Fliff. And that's how EV betting works, right? Well, why? How do we know if this turns out to be a good thing and whether or not we really had an advantage when we look back on it? Closing line value is that metric. Closing line value is actually a more important metric than whether or not you won a given bet. Because on a bet, you may win, you may lose. What we're saying is the price is better than the odds of that thing happening. So we're going to take that price, and in the long run, we're going to win enough of these that we're going to make money, right? That's why if you look at people that use OddsJam, typically we're going to lose more bets than we win, but we're winning so much more on the bets that we do win that we win money in the end. Because we know that a lot of times the underdogs are getting a price premium. So we're going to bet on those underdogs because the price justifies it. But we may lose more than we win on there. How do you know whether or not these bets were really good in the long run? Because you place a bet at a point in time. Once that bet happens, we go and place this bet at Kevin Durant over at Fliff right now at minus 120. But that market's going to keep moving up until when the game starts at 9 o'clock tonight. Right. So when that game starts, those prices probably going to be different. Fliff might change their prices. All these places might change their prices before that on this particular player prop. Right. So the way we can know whether or not we are successful in our assessment of the bets that we were making is by closing line value. And what closing line value is to kind of understand from the words, closing line value is what's the difference between what we placed the bet at and what the line closed at right when the line stopped being offered. Because that is typically when the game is about to start and when the most information is known And in some cases, things are going to move against us during the rest of the day if we place this bet right now. But those are out of our control. But if we can look at over time and across all of our bets, hey, these are the bets that are doing better than what the market says they should be at game time, and we have a good enough percentage of those, we know that long term with enough bets, we are going to be a winner, right? And so one of the things that OddsJam provides that I think is just awesome is this bet tracker. And so in the bet tracker, you can see, and in this case, like every day, I do a stream from 7:30 to 9:30 or so Central Time in each morning, weekdays, and I go in and place my bets. And so the bets that I placed this morning, you're going to see all around on the screen today, on this bet tracker screen. And what you're going to see is even though the lines aren't closed in many of these circumstances, what we can see is how are we tracking against what the line is currently, typically at the sharpest sportsbook in the world, Pinnacle. But how are we doing against what that line is now? Now, if you see the bets I've placed today, look at all this green. So the odds that are here on this page, and we'll scroll down so it's a little easier to see, on this bet tracking page, all the odds here are the odds that I placed my wager at. So in this case, Mallorca versus Cadiz. This was a tennis bet, I believe. And that is or maybe that's a soccer bet. I don't even know because I'm not trying to predict the future on that. I'm looking at the math. So in this case, it's a team total over 1.5. I do believe it is soccer now that I realize what a team total is. It's not an individual player. It's a team. So it's soccer. Bear with me. But if I look at it, the odds that I placed are plus 190. The current odds are plus 179. It even says Novig Pinnacle. That's what the closing line is based on the Pinnacle lines currently. The Novig line is now plus 179. I'm doing great on this bet. We're plus 11 above the closing line value, and this is looking really good. And so if you see odds that are green, that means you're beating closing line value. That means you have a plus EV wager either made, closed, pending, whatever. Or if it's red, it means you're behind the market. Now, you're not going to be right all 100% of the time, but look at all this, baby. Look at all this green. Look at all this green. This is from this morning. So, yeah, we had plus EV when we placed the bet, and then sometimes things turn, right? And so in this case, the line has moved against Kevin Durant under 36.5, and now we've got some negative CLV. That's going to happen. Things are going to happen in the world where they're like, hey, seems like Kevin Durant's all fired up today, and the market gets priced in and the market changes. So you're going to see that. But when look at how many greens we have compared to reds. That is when we are placing some serious plus EV bets. And that's exactly what you want to be seeing, is you want to be seeing, can I beat the market through prices versus what the market is doing, baking in all of the knowledge in the world. No matter what we do, we can't get all the knowledge in the world, but we can look at prices and we can assess a market for what that should be. So that's why the positive EV betting with OddsJam is so powerful. And so when we look at the closing line value, now we're saying, oh, this is great. So what I want to do is typically, more closing line value on the surface is a good thing, right? Closing line value is inherently something that you want as much of as you can get. Now, I will caution you too. And so in the OddsJam screen, you can go onto your dashboard and see what is my ongoing closing line value percentage. So how many bets do I have that are plus, positive to the closing line value or green in that screen on the bet tracker versus how many are not. And that is that percentage, and I'll actually show you this on my dashboard. I'll pull it up. Is that you want to see, in my opinion, the higher the CLV, the better in general. And what I search for is, and let's pull this back up here for you. What I search for, this is my CLV for my dashboard. Now, I don't enter all of my bets, so my profits are a little bit off. So, I enter the bets, but I don't enter the outcomes for all of them because that's arduous. And I use Pickett for tracking the results on a cash basis. So you can follow me on Pickett, A-Train Bets on Pickett. You can see all my wins and losses on that. And I even try to share the dollar values, the unit amounts, all that stuff is available. So I'm being transparent about that. But on the OddsJam side, I do log all the bets so I can see this number on CLV. Now, some would argue that the higher the CLV, the better. I disagree with this, and I'll tell you why. So what happens? So say I'm placing bets that I have such high confidence in that I know, oh man, these are going to crush the market, and I'm going to take that and I'm going to win, and I'm going to have 90% CLV. And I mean, sometimes the market's going to move against me no matter what I do, but I'm going to be just super high CLV. Yes, on a per unit basis, you will have a higher degree of winners. Agreed. Like you won't win any more or less of the bets themselves, but you'll win more money on a percent of the bets that you have. However, if you have a 90% CLV, how did you get that? You got that by avoiding a whole bunch of bets that were actually positive EV that would have made you money, but you didn't get that action. You didn't get that money in play. And so in my mind, and where I find my sweet spot is in that 65 to 70% range. Because what that means to me is that I'm well above average in terms of will my bets be plus EV or not, but I'm not so above average that I'm only taking the best of the best. The way I talk about it is it's like being a rock at a poker table. Is you play only your very best hands. It's awfully dreadful to do that, but you win most of the times you play. You just don't win enough to make the most money. And here we're interested in making the most money. And so to me, I think a CLV, a closing line value in that 65 to 70% range is ideal because it means you're placing enough bets that you're getting as much action as possible. You're extracting a good amount of profits and plus EV, but you're not leaving a ton of money on the table. A rock that never plays the hands in a poker match can't win those hands. He's folding, 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 folding. Here, we're in the game, we're placing the bets, but we're not being so aggressive that we're ruining our profitability, but we're being aggressive enough that we're winning and getting enough action that we're able to have that plus CLV. So that's something to consider because I don't know that take is commonly out there, is that you can have too high of a CLV, in which means you're not being aggressive enough in the bets that you're making. So to me, 65 to 70% feels about right. And so that's what I would encourage you to do. Now, the question would naturally be, well, how do you do that? Well, let's go into that positive EV screen, and I'll show you the way I control, ultimately, the way I have my CLV, my closing line value in the end. Is the way I try to influence my closing line value is by setting a percentage, and I do this whether I'm using the positive EV tool or I'm using my A-Train Bets money machine to calculate a positive EV play that's not on this screen, but is available because of my assessment of the market versus the lines that I'm getting. Because you could do that with any source of lines. You just have to be able to say, what's the true market line versus what is the price I can actually pay. And so I have another video on that, so you can look up how I extend OddsJam and do that kind of assessment outside of the EV page. But in this page, and certainly on what I'm calculating myself, I'm looking for a minimum percentage EV, calculated EV against the market of 1.5% or greater. And so I get all of those plus, the ones that are going to be the 90% CLV place, but I'm taking a lot more bets as well because I realize like what this means to me, let me pull it up here. What the percentage, so I'm on the positive EV screen, and what this percentage on the positive EV screen means to me is that this is where I'm controlling for how much am I confident in my assessment of the market. So if my assessment of the market is more or less confident, then I'm going to put more or less money on a particular bet. But at minimum, I want it to be a 1.5% EV plus EV calculation, because what that means is that there's a certain amount of uncertainty in my ability to assess the market, whether I'm using Pinnacle lines or whether I'm using an OddsJam algorithm, whatever. We don't know. There's no magic formula that tells us exactly what the market should be. We have to estimate that. So I say, well, I don't want to cut it so close that I'm actually taking negative EV plays too often, but I want to have enough aggressiveness that I'm taking most of the plus EV plays, right? And so 1.5% on the minimum percentage, along with a width calculation of 40 or less, tends to give me what I found to be the best results that lead me to a closing line value in that 65 to 70% range. So for me, that's what works. That may be different for you. Your risk profile, you may say, I really want to shoot for a closing line value of 75% or above. You can play with those numbers on the filters on the positive EV page and get closer to that CLV that you desire because your risk profile, your ability to deal with the variance, your size of your bankroll can't handle the swings as much. Like there's a bunch of reasons why you want to be more conservative. Would never argue against that. Just saying, if your goal is to make the most profit, you want to recognize that too much CLV can hurt you in that goal. So to me, that's where it's a really useful metric, most important metric to evaluate whether or not your betting strategy is effective, because on any given bet, you're going to win or lose that bet, but you can't just look at that bet and say, oh, that was a good bet because I won it, or that was a bad bet because I lost it. What you have to say is, in aggregate, how is my methodology serving me in finding positive EV plays? And so closing line value is a huge part of that. It's not a complicated calculation at all. It's simple arithmetic. You're just comparing the price you got against the price it ended at, or the price it is now, right? And so that's where understanding the implications of that and the summary, the summation of that, the aggregation of all those closing line values to give you that percent, that's what you as a sharp sports bettor are going to want to be looking at to determine, is my methodology, whatever that methodology is. Use a totally different methodology if you want to, but check. Closing line value is going to tell you whether or not that's a good methodology every time. So with that, hopefully you learned something here. And hopefully you can start using closing line value to help drive your approach to being a sharp sports bettor in a way that will lead you to a lot more profits. And certainly I believe OddsJam is a great way to help you do that. But regardless, at least now you have a better sense of what closing line value is. So if you find this video useful, if you want to see me making my bets, being fully transparent, having, owning my results plus and minus, check out my live streams Monday through Friday, 7:30 a.m. Central Time, where I go through and I make my bets. I'll show you making my bets. I'll show you my methodology, show you my logic, and I'll show you my results, because the math checks out. I have nothing to hide. And I think that there's a credibility problem in this space. I want to help you understand how to be a sharp sports bettor, show you my work, show you what I'm doing. I don't want you to do what I'm doing. I want you to learn from what I'm doing and be able to do it yourself. So with that, please like and subscribe, follow, use my link, atrainbets.oddsjam.com, to sign up for OddsJam, and I will give you the A-Train Bets money machine at no cost, but it will also help support my efforts in creating these educational videos to help you become a sharp sports bettor and help us all have more fun winning money betting on sports. So with that, take care, everybody, and we will see you in the next video.
What you gonna do?